It is the Change of Plans podcast. I'm Joe Aguirre. He is Vin Provenzano. And the future for this guy is so bright.
I gotta wear my shades. I always wonder, like, why people wear shades inside. Like, I'm trying to do it. Like, I just can't. It's weird, right? I mean, I do like these shades though, but I've just never been like in the house shades guy. I heard some guy call them like face jewelry. I think they're just sunglasses. I don't understand.
Can I tell you something funny? I love sunglasses. No. I really do. I think they're great.
Me too. I love them. Love them.
I have, in my 48 years on this planet, 3 times I have spent in excess of $150 on a pair of sunglasses.
Yep, reasonable.
And in each instance, I maintained possession of those glasses for less than 5 days.
Yep. That's the it's like having a pen, right? Like you buy a nice pen, 8 hours. 8 hours fucking tops.
Why does that happen?
It's just because, like, it's one of those things you're not wearing all the time, right? Like, my thing is, I buy a nice pair. I'm pretty snobby with my fucking sunglasses. I'm not gonna lie. And then I put them down, and I inevitably sit on them. Like one time, I bought them. I put them on in the mall because I wanted to be that cool guy. Putting shit in my car, put them on the seat. I literally had like walk from like Sunglass Hut to my fucking car, fucking plop my fat ass on the fucking seat. Smash, kabooey. I didn't even wear them outside. I wore them in like the parking garage. You know,
that's the other devastating thing sunglasses suffer is getting crushed under your own weight. But
they get like slightly bent, so they're kind of fucking crooked on your head.
Yep. Yeah, I always used to buy like $10 sunglasses a lot, and I thought the first time I did it, I thought, you know what? Let me step up my game. If I buy a nice pair of sunglasses, I'll take really good care of them. And I mean, the first day, I babied those suckers. And on the second day, I think I left them on top of a phone booth.
Yeah, dude, it's like pens, sunglasses. I've gone through at least 75 umbrellas. The fucking umbrellas are the worst.
Like, they should make disposable umbrellas, like one-time use umbrellas. Sell it for $1. Yeah, I don't want to fold it up. I don't need any of that. Just here we go. Garbage.
I can't. It's all the time. But yeah, so I was gonna try to do the sunglass thing today, but I can't look at myself without laughing. So we're not gonna do that today. It's kind of like like growing a mustache for me. Like, cause I'm bald, so I look weird. I look like I can't go to a playground, right? Like I can't be on school property because I'm some bald guy with a fucking creepy mustache, right? And like that's the other thing I got a pet peeve of today. These young kids with fucking mullets and mustaches, right? Like I don't fucking understand where it became cool to be a pervert. You look like a pervert, kid. Like it's just weird.
Listen, that's not a style that's been in style since the 70s. Retro.
I know, and it should have stayed there. Like, it's like, I'm telling you, if I had a daughter in high school and some dude's rolling up with a pedo stash, fucking, you can just march your ass right back. Just wherever you came from, sir. That is weird as shit. It's fucking weird.
You know what I've taken to lately? Especially with young people. I don't call them by name. I call them by something I see about them. You know?
Yeah, that's very Jamaican. We were in Jamaica, and our like driver was very much like that. He was like, "Listen, we don't have racism in Jamaica. like if we see a Chinese or an Asian person, we just call him Chinaman. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, they get mad because they could be from somewhere else in Asia, but if you look Chinese, we're calling you Chinaman. If you're, if you're white, we call you Whitey or Snowflake, or like they just, whatever you look like, that's how you're identified.
Yeah.
I had to about like, well, don't ever come to the United States and try to pull that stuff, because it's not going to end well.
No, so listen, I disagree with that.
Oh no, I'm not
I
I'm not
do.
going down this path, Joe.
No, I'm telling you right now, no. I make fun of people all the time.
And
Shocked.
I am shocked, Joe. Shocked.
People really like it.
Well,
people are almost off put when I don't break balls.
No, it's funny. I had this conversation the other day, and people always ask, I get away with a lot of shit I say, right? And I'm assuming you're the same way. Like, we say like some outlandish shit, and sometimes I do it to see how far I can push it. Like, and if it was like 98% of the population, you're probably going to eat a wall somewhere. But people just laugh. They're just look at me and laugh. And I think it's because I say it with like a smile on my face. And I think you have to embrace the douchebaggery sometimes. Like, right, you got to have a sense of humor. But like sometimes I'll say some inappropriate stuff, but I embrace my doucheness. Right? There's nothing worse than like kind of like a douchey guy who doesn't embrace the douchiness, and so he denies being a douche. And then you're just infuriated because be like, dude, you're saying some dumb shit just to be an asshole. But if you say it and you just kind of smile and laugh with it, people tend to go along with it. But to start identifying people by the way they look, that is a tough rope to walk, my friend.
No, it's hilarious, and it is the last beacon of comedy. I'm telling you, young people seem to enjoy the roast.
Oh, a thousand, 1,000%. I could tell you
that's the whole thing. You listen, you just have to know the person you're talking to, and you have to adjust your comedy, right?
Yeah.
People of our generation, we can joke about racial issues and things like that. We can, because we always did it, and now you're not supposed to do it. But when we're together, that's what we're going to do.
Correct.
When the young kids are around, you can't do that. But it's got to be more of a roasting thing. What they do for a job, or literally the clothes that they're wearing, or, an eyebrow ring. I mean, that's your name. Hey, listen, eyebrow ring, give me a favor. Grab that box and bring it over here, right?
I have my stepson has one of his friends, and he's half black, half white. And he is one of the funniest kids I ever met, because he will say some stuff that I can't say and you can't say, and then he'll look at me because he thinks it's hilarious. So he's playing both sides of the fence, which is completely genius.
Yeah.
So it's like he entertains me for hours on end, because I know what he's doing, because he looks at me while he does it, and he's like, "Go ahead, try to match my funny with this one, white old man." And I'm like, "Who, you son of a gun?" And he's like, "I could do it both ways." And I'm like, "Son of a bitch."
Usually when you're with people that you like, people of different races or ethnicities, you can, right? It's like we can see that we're different, and we can poke fun of each other in like a lighthearted way. That's nice.
Yes.
That's, here's what I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you a funny story, right? When I was a kid, I went to a parochial school, right? A Catholic school. There were not many black kids in my school. Okay. And I'll never forget the first family that showed up that was black, and they happened to be Jamaican. And one of them was in the grade behind me. One was a couple grades, and then one was much younger. We canceled Halloween that year. No dressing up.
Why?
They were Jehovah's Witnesses. And they did not observe Halloween.
So what did you dress up as, Joe?
let me take it a step further. So, I mean, right? No, you can't. We'd always
Yeah.
dressed up. That's just how we
Yeah.
did. I said, well, why can't we do it? And it slowly got explained. It's these guys are Jehovah's Witnesses against their religion. Can't do it. Why is that part of their religion? Tell me about Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm kind of interested. What else do they believe? And we were told, can't talk about it. Just not going to dress up for Halloween. And I thought to myself, think about the resentment that they created for those black kids who cost 120 white kids Halloween because of their religion. And rather than take the opportunity to explain to us what that religion was, why it was against that religion, they just sort of like this is like my point is trying to be politically correct in a lot of situations blows up in your face.
1,000%, like 1,000,000,000 bajillion percent. I think we had this discussion before, and I was talking to my wife, and she's a teacher. She's works for a variety of school system. Does I'm not going to tell who she works for, but they have this like training, and it was a book about how not to acknowledge race. Like you just don't acknowledge it at all. White, Hispanic, black, whatever. And that's supposed to solve the problem, which is like that is literally like the most racist thing to do, right? Like you have to be able to acknowledge, hey, people have different backgrounds, right? Based on religion, ethnicity, whatever the case may be. It's people based on that stuff, your upbringing is very different than yours, right? Like, but people nowadays can't have a discussion about it it's almost off-putting, and I don't, and that's the way they're teaching in schools, and I just don't I don't understand it. I think when I was growing up, we really didn't have, well, I shouldn't say we didn't have that, I just didn't see it. I was very fortunate. I grew up with a diverse background, and it was just, you're just hanging out with whoever in the neighborhood, right? Like we didn't, like my parents were very open about like what my friendship circle was. And I think it even expanded into more when I went to high school and college, and the different groups I was hanging out in. In college for me, that was my years of, I was battle rapping and DJing, and usually the room I was hanging out in didn't look like me, right? But but it was funny because like I felt very comfortable on like who I was as a person, but I think it was how I was brought up. So I was able to be in a room where like I'm the only white kid rapping, or when I was in college, my workout buddy, we went to Central Connecticut. I knew him at Central, but like we didn't hang out. He was like, "Who's this white kid who was rapping in, our cafeteria?" They called it the BET section. Like that's what they, like there was a whole, like it was like almost like it was white people over here, black Hispanics were over here, and like it's almost like I got like the hall pass because I'm going in battle rap and acting crazy. And you ask him, you fast forward 30 years later, he's like, always wondered who that kid was that would just walk into the cool part of the calf. And he was like, that was you. And I'm like, it was, but like I think it was a product of my upbringing and taking time to understand the situation. Like you said, read the room, right? Like people, they see me and Joe, hey, we're outgoing, we're funny, but we're not like offensively funny because we read the room. And that's what I try to tell people. That's what I try to tell my stepson and my clients and other attorneys if I'm in court, is that, listen, you have different facets of yourself, right? And you have to, you can't just go in and be like, well, fuck it, I'm pulling my pants down, I'm Vin, or fuck it, I'm Joe, right? Like in a perfect world, like maybe, but like you have to be able to maneuver within every room and understand that you're still being you, but like you're being just a different part of you. And I think people lack that ability, and I think a lot of it has to do with how people interact now with social media. And I know me and you bang hard on that. And I'm not trying to be that, oh man, oh my God, social media, because I get it. That's how people communicate now. But you lose that part of it, right? Like you
Yeah.
lose that interaction of reading a room, knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, and being able to, shape that conversation or shape yourself in a way where you could operate and be successful in any situation. And I think that's kind of a lost art that, I really try to instill in people. I mean, that, like being on the radio, being on podcasts, dealing with a variety of people in a variety of different scenarios, but you could adjust, right? You're still being you, but you're just using a different facet of Joe.
Oh, listen, I get upset when I hear people talk about and say, like we can't say certain things, certain words. I mean, as a white person, if you're close with a black person, you might use the N-word with that person if they've given you the black card. And listen, we all have black friends.
Listen,
You know,
I
they
have quite a few, but I will say, Joe, I will say I have not. But I will tell you, as a white person,
yes.
one of the coolest things that will ever, ever happen to you in your life is when your black friends, you're shooting this shit, and they're just like my N word, and they look at me
Yeah.
like it is the proudest moment. It was one of the proudest moments I've ever had. Now,
Let me be clear. I've never exchanged the token. You know what I mean? I've
oh,
never
okay. I'm just
said
making
it.
sure.
I've
I'm
never
just
said it. They're like,
because
no, you can say it.
I just had a disclaimer
Listen,
go across the bottom of
I've
our.
been invited to the barbecue.
Yes.
I've been
Yep.
given the black card. Do
Yep.
it. You can do it. And I'm like,
Mm-mm.
that's
Mm.
an honor. I appreciate it. I will
Mm-hmm.
not. I will not.
Mm-mm.
I think I could say it right in that situation. You know what I mean? I could. Now,
Yeah.
smart enough to know in any other company would never,
Never.
wouldn't,
Ever.
the word
Ever.
wouldn't even enter my mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, and listen, I think being the authentic you is knowing that your words matter and knowing that the way you address people, you meet somebody new for the first time, be respectful, be polite. You don't know that person. That
Correct.
person in short order might be someone who you break balls with, like in a major way, not right this second.
Yeah.
Sometimes within 30 seconds, you're breaking, hey, I like this guy, right? And you're off and running to the races, but you got to test the waters. And
You
you have
do.
to make
Yes.
sure that the company that you're with, and listen, if your good friend is there with their friend and you don't know their friend, it's not free for all time. You got to know. I
Yes.
gotta I gotta find out
Yes.
how because you know what I mean. That could
You
cause some
got it.
strife. So again, you're just your level of appropriateness with people that you're close to and people that you know. It's a fluid situation. You got to be alert. That's how. Again, that's why I can be mean and say funny stuff to people. Everybody knows I'm being good natured about it. You know what I
Correct.
mean? I don't obviously make racial jokes. I don't do that, but I also don't like people who kind of what you were alluding to, people that don't see race. And it's
So
like, well, we know we're different. I mean,
yeah.
why can't we address it and laugh about it and then
Correct.
talk about and enjoy things we do have in common? I don't understand why people get all freaked out by it.
I saw this TikTok the other day, and I watched it like 1,000 times. It was the funniest thing ever. So this African American guy sitting there laying on his bed and just cuddling with his golden retriever, right? Just fucking golden retriever. He's like, white people, how? And he has a whole TikTok on like the secrets white people kept from black people. And he's like, how come you didn't tell us
Right.
about golden retrievers? He's like,
Yeah.
no, we get the pit bulls, but you didn't tell us about these golden retrievers. And I was dying laughing because it's hilarious. But like to your point, like I get a lot. What happens with me a lot because I tend to be a pretty big personality is that people try to adopt my personality when they're with me.
Yeah.
Right. So they are not reading the room. They're just like, especially attorneys in a courtroom, they're like, oh, Vince here. Like the gloves are off. Let's act like Vin. But it doesn't work for them, right? Like, so you need to read the room. You need to learn how to react in every situation. Um, and that's, that ability to react is the actual power, right? Like that's what's going to drive your success and progress in life, whether you're joking around or whether you're in a business meeting. In any setting, it's how you're reacting to the environment. So the way I react in an environment or the way Joe reacts in the environment may not work for you, right? So you have to. I had an employee that I do a lot of like closings and things like that, and this was way back in the day. And I have a certain shtick, right? Like, when I'm interacting with closings, like I got my thing, like I know what I do, and they try to do my shtick, and it was very off-putting, right? And I'm like, listen, like it works for me because I read the room. I'm not gonna do the shtick every time, but it's just my personality. Like you have to kind of own yours and and embrace that. Like you could, I guess, try to use some things I do, but it just because I'm doing it doesn't make it right. So read the room, react appropriately, and I think people lack the confidence in themselves, though, and that's why they do it. Right? It's kind of they try to mirror everybody else instead of embracing who they are and saying, "Hey, you know what? I don't got to be Vin or I don't got to be Joe, but I add something different that Vin and Joe don't have. So
Yeah.
give me that." Right? Like whether like me and my wife are very different in a lot of aspects, but what I lack, she brings to the table, right? Like you could only imagine if I'm going out with my wife and we're on a double date and it's me and my wife are the same fucking person. Like whoever's on the other side of that table on our double date is never going back out to eat with us. Like it's manageable if my wife's around and I'm in. It's a 50-50 they're coming back. If my wife was just like me, there's 100% chance they're ever coming
That's
back out
funny.
to dinner. But we know that. But it's funny how like me and my wife recognize that. Like it is the give and take of, hey, this is what Vin brings to the table, and I even it out, and he evens me out. Um, and I think that is, and it's the same thing going back to friendships, right? Like, we've talked about the windows, the doors, and the floors and things of that nature, but everyone has to be confident enough in themselves to be like, okay, what I'm bringing to the table is adding to Joe and adding to Ben. But it is funny, and I mean, even when me and you get together, like I could guarantee you, if we're at a networking event, it's pretty, you could bet the house that, me and Joe are going to be pretty big personalities, but we feed off each other. It's not like, well, Joe's going to say something crazy. So Joe, you thought that was crazy. Watch this shit. Right. Like, and I think the more we do this, I mean, we haven't really done any networking since this stuff, but I think it would be enjoyable because
Oh
the
yeah.
more we have, but it's exactly like you said, it's reading the room and taking the temperature and knowing who you are and then maneuvering around whatever space you're in.
So I don't know how much of this you get, and if you don't get it much now, you can expect to. This is what happens to me because of who I am and because of what I do. A lot of the times when I meet new people, they come at me. They got they try to be quick, and I got to be quicker, and I'm
Yeah,
always
I know.
quicker. I walk into every situation, and I'm scanning the room. I'm looking for something I'm gonna rip you on, and if you come out guns
Yeah,
blazing,
dude.
oh yeah, I'll
Li-
you
Listen,
know. I
it's
I I
every
try to
time.
alpha dog in every situation. Like I walk in there, and I'm like, I'm the dude.
Yeah,
But
no,
people want to people want do people right? So
yes.
I'm at this radio station. I'm really getting to know a lot of people over there now really well, and like slowly but surely, some of them kind of come at me to get a reaction out of me and to see what
Hmm.
I'll do, and starting to really goof around with a lot of people at work. I like them; they're genuinely good people. Right now, there's nobody there that I don't feel comfortable talking to or joking with or being lighthearted with. But there's a lot of them that'll sort of come at me, and they love it when I like fuck them up. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you got me. It's weird.
No, like listen, it's all the time. I like it so like at my normal gym, I go in the locker room and it's locker room banter, but everyone knows, like, just don't go at Vin. Because I'm like that guy, like It's friendly red zone. Like I'm immediately hurting your feelings, and it's bad. It's a bad, it's a bad habit I have. So whatever you're coming at with me, I'm going next level, like shutting it down. But I had a guy today. I had an attorney today sent me an email. He must have been drunk last night at 11. I have to chalk it up to him fucking boozing because it was the most insane, egotistical. Like basically, hey, do what I say, or if I have to really do what I want to do, you're never getting a deal. And this is how it's getting done. Like you have this time frame, like blah, 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 blah. Like it was an insane email. And I rewrote an email like 17 fucking times. I'm just like stewing. And then you know what my response was? And I might have blind CC'd some other professionals on it. I was like, good morning. I believe your email was hacked by your ego. Yo, and then,
Yeah, that's
yeah, buddy.
good. That's
I'm
real
like,
good.
yep. And then I was super passive aggressive for the next part of my email, like just real professional, but like just say like I'm professional, but I am just backhanding the fuck out of you in this email. But like that first line, like you spent an hour writing this 80-page email about how big your ding dong is, and in one sentence, I'm like, eh. And
I
then
love that.
nobody like, but no fucking response, like zero response. And that's what I do, ladies and gentlemen. Like not all the time, but you pick your scenario, but you also read the room, right? So I know this particular attorney likes to grieve other attorneys, like about certain situations. So I just kindly pointed out, like, hey, I know you're not going to negotiate, but guess what? It's not your case, it's your client. So the way I practice law is I listen to my client, like really passive aggressive, like, if you're trying to line some shit up, I got you now. But it's reading the room, knowing how to react properly, and embrace it. Right? Like, not too many attorneys are getting away with that fucking, hey, your email got hacked. It must have been your ego line. Like, that's a rare fucking breed. And that's me. But it works for me. And I think I spent a lot of my time, and I know I've talked about this before in my profession, been doing it 18 years, probably spent 14 or 15 years trying to do it like everybody else. Like I have. Like
Yeah.
I was just like, I got to do it like this guy. And not saying they're bad attorneys, but it worked for them. I didn't realize like the reason why I've been somewhat successful is because I'm me. Right. And so, I've embraced that probably over the past 4 years of, hey, I'm going to do it my way. Not in a, hey, like my way is the right way. Like you have to be able to learn and listen. Right. Like, so I think our confidence isn't something where like, hey, we know everything. We're going to keep doing things the way we do because that's just ignorant. But I think you have to embrace who you are, and then if you want to progress forward, then make those little changes. But the first thing you need to do is be like, hey, you know what, realize where you're at, what you have achieved to this point, embrace it, say, hey, it's okay, I can be me, and then take those little steps every day to improve and progress and figure out, hey, what missteps you could avoid and take those other steps. Right. But the first thing is you have to be with okay and embracing yourself and congratulating yourself and saying, hey, the way I'm doing it, it's okay. And sometimes the way you're doing shit is not okay either. Right. Like you also got to look at the flip side of the coin, but like, hey, you're doing shit and your life's fucked up. Right. So you can't progress in life if you're doing the same shit. I had a young kid in here, 18. He's here with his dad, and he did some dumb shit. Like kids broke into the school they go to, and they get arrested. Right now, you're facing 4 felonies. You're 18 years old, and you just had to drive from some fancy town near the shore to my office with your dad. So he sits down, and I'm like, man, how was that drive, bro? Like that's a weird drive, right? A little
Yeah.
quiet. And I'm like, what's your game plan? Right? Like, well, it's just stupid. I'm like, I get it, but you got 4 felonies. Like, what's your game plan? What are you going to do to change it? What? And he kept getting on his phone. I'm like, I'm gonna throw your phone through the fucking wall. Get off your phone. He's like, his dad's laughing, and his dad's like, and he's like, Dad, you haven't laughed this, like that in forever. He's like, because you're not funny, but he is. And I looked at him, I'm like, but it's one of those times, like, listen, you're at 18, you have to make a decision. I'm not saying, hey, you don't do dumb shit. You're gonna do dumb shit. You're 18, but don't keep doing the same dumb shit. Because if you do, you're gonna end up at fucking 45 at Taco Bell. Hey, and if that's your job, that's fine. But if you have bigger aspirations in life, then you gotta change your step, right? He's like, I want to go into the military. I want to go into the Air Force. I'm like, bro, you can't even get community service done. What are your steps you're taking to get to that next step? And but trying to have that conversation with an 18-year-old is like mission impossible. But I'm like, you are who you hang with. That was like one of the things I try to tell them. Like, the people you are with represent who you are. Like kids don't get that, right? They're like, oh, my friend's an asshole, and but like, people associate you with your friends,
Right.
and so it's okay to have like friends that are funny or maybe get in trouble a little bit, but realize there's consequences to all of that. And it's tough to have that conversation with a teenager, man. Like, it's even with adults though, like, 'cause you get someone, you try to have this conversation with someone who's like 45 and they're like, well, I've been doing it this way forever. And I'm like, but if you're at my office, like, something happened in your life to get to my office, right? So you're at the point where, like, okay, a change needs to be made because you're at your lawyer's office. You've got arrested, you're going through a divorce, but there is a change that needs to be made. And that is, I think everyone knows who gets to my office or who I'm coaching is they want the change, but that goal or what they want change seems so far away that they just get stuck, right? Like, instead of taking tiny steps and realizing the little bit of progress that you can make by taking these tiny steps, they just look at like, oh my God, that's a mountain I got to climb and I don't got it in me. And
Yeah.
I try to tell people it's the little shit, Joe, right? Like, it's all those little steps you took to get where you're at now, right? Like, it's all the little steps. It's not, there wasn't some great big epiphany where we sat up in bed and be like, fuck it, I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to be, a radio host. It's the small shit. It's that snowflake that turns into a snowball that turns into an avalanche. It's that snowball is just 1,000 snowflakes. And it's just a little bit, little bit, little bit. And all of a sudden you reach a tipping point where, life is going pretty well. Or it could be the flip side where you're just making dumb decisions, like little dumb decisions. All of a sudden it's a big dumb decision. And then it's a life altering,
Yep.
you can't recover from decision.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And again, when I mentor students or talk to my interns or whatever have you, I mean, one of the things I always tell people is like, you're looking for employment in the field, right? And opportunities will come along, and some opportunities are a step towards what you really want to do, and some steps are away from what you want to do, and that's got to be a factor in what you're doing, right?
Correct.
Because too many steps in the wrong direction and you're on the outside looking in again.
A
And
thousand
so,
percent.
right? I mean, that's sort of how this all works. Again, I mean, generally speaking, with most problems, most situations, right? Let's take gambling, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go out and bet 25 grand on the first day and blow all your money. You start betting a little bit, you win a little bit, you lose a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, you win some more, and you're like, you know what? Yeah, you come into a little bit of money and you're like going for it. So sometimes, yeah, I mean, eventually it could become a problem relatively quickly, but it's not going to generally, you're not going to avalanche or fall off the cliff immediately with anything. It's generally things start to add up, add up, add up, add up, add
Mm-hmm.
up, add up. And next thing you know, you're in over your head, no matter what it is. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how life works. And again, I think if you look at it in, are you achieving what you want or are you going in the opposite direction? You could do that with your diet. You could do that with your relationships. You could do that with work, with your career, with all sorts of
Yeah.
things. I think this is the way you really got to look at what's going on out there And again, are you willing to sacrifice money in the short term for success in the long term? And it's especially something that I think you're going to find. I have a 20 and a 22-year-old. They're girls. Your stepson is 18,
17.
17, going to be
Yep.
18, right? And it's at that point where like they don't really understand how life works, and these young people have a really hard time seeing. I'll give you a good example. My 20-year-old daughter today was looking at bouncy houses,
Mm-hmm.
and it was for sale for like $2,500. And she goes, "What kind of an idiot would spend $2,500 on that?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, let's say you spend $2,500 on it. You do a couple of parties the first weekend, $200 an hour,
Yep.
5 hours a day. How you doing? 2 more gigs the following weekend. That thing's bought and paid for.
Mm-hmm.
The following weekend, you do parties on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. How you doing now?" The idea of laying out $2,500 to purchase this thing, I'm not doing that. Well, as you saw, I just laid out your 25 and you've tripled it by the first weekend of the first month. But they don't look at things that way. They want the instant gratification of, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a YouTube video. Nobody watched it. Fuck it. I'm not going to be a YouTube star now.
Well, and I think a big problem is they're always looking to someone else to like either validate or have them give the answer, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to enroll in this course, or I'm going to watch this YouTube video because I want this guy to give me the answer to my problems or what my future should be, instead of looking at the person in the room, which is yourself, right? Like the answer's with everybody. Like we're human beings are smart, right? Like we know what our issues are. There's no one else, like no one else is better equipped to know what our issues are and how to deal with them than yourself, right? Like Joe, like you don't know what my issues are, but me sitting in this room, I'm like, okay, this is the shit I got to work on. Now it's up to me to go and take that next step, even that little step, to go and try to figure out, okay, what is my problem or what is the goal? What's the next step I need to be? Instead of always so quickly jumping online, well, I got to do it like this guy did it. I got to do it like Tony Robbins did it. Or, this is how this young person did. This is how Jake Paul did it. So I got to do it that way, instead of looking at, okay, what is my skill set, right? Like if I'm having an issue, what is my responsibility? What am I contributing to that issue? And if I can figure that out, okay, what do I need to change? Even the slightest thing where I'm reading or listening to a podcast 10 minutes a day, or I'm making a phone call, right? Like what could I do now to change a situation I put myself in? And no one ever looks within themselves. No one ever looks in the person sitting in the chair. They're like, I need Vin as my life coach to change my life. Like that's not the way I coach. Like, I'm not you sign up with me. I'm not telling you what I'm gonna do to fix your problem or what I would do to fix your problem. Through our discussions and through our sessions, you're gonna figure out what works for you.
Right.
So like I'm just facilitating the conversation that you need to have with yourself. And that's the best part of my job, is watching it and then watching it click with the person. Like when they have that like aha moment and you're like, "Yep, and you did it. You got there." So it's looking within yourself, not saying, "Well, I need a self-help book or I need even this podcast to change my life." Like we're not here to change everybody's lives. We're here to have discussions, maybe bring some shit to the table that helps you recognize certain things that are going to happen, and you use tidbits and tips and things like that. But it all starts with you. Like, I mean, that's the bottom line. And these kids don't get it. Like these kids don't get the self-made. Their self-made is like pop some Instagram reels and TikTok reels, and all of a sudden I'm gonna be famous. They don't know the groundwork you got to lay to get there, right? Like they don't know the millions of adjustments me and you have had to make in our careers, the little steps, the thousands of side steps and pivots we made to kind of get to where we are, and we're still making those side steps and pivots, right? Like we're still dodging the potholes, and sometimes you step in the pothole, but you either sit there or take your next step and get out of the fucking pothole. And I think that was like that's probably my strongest quality. My mom had told me the other day that, I have broad shoulders, right? Like I could carry a lot of shit. Um, which I can, and I know that. So like I never get too down when shit hits the fan. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get through it. I got through shit before. I got through worse shit. So I'm good, right? Like I actually thrive in those more than a environment of just success all the time. Like I need that grind sometimes. I think I thrive better in that. That's just knowing hey, it's a moment, right? Like I know it's just a moment. I know this shit's gonna be different tomorrow. And if it's not different, then that's on me. It's nobody else's fault. It's not, well, I got bad luck. Like, my family, like we always laugh, hey, you're a Provenzano, you got that Provenzano luck. And like to some point, like I get it. Like I'm like Charlie Brown. Like I just anticipate shit's gonna go fucking down. Like my wife laughs. Like I know it's gonna happen. Like I'm just anticipating it, but I also know that I always come out the other end. Like 98% of us wake up the next morning from whatever fucking mistake or challenge we had in life. Like we are lucky enough to wake up tomorrow, right? That means it's not that serious because we're still alive and we still have the opportunity to change it. So instead of dwelling in it and just repeating the same shitty day every day, take that little step because eventually you're going to get out of that moment because you're the one who takes a moment and creates it into a lifestyle. I mean, it's all under our control. Like, so live life by moments, or you could, take it as, well, this is just my life, but then that's on you. That's not on anybody else.
Oh, that's I like that. Listen, I think when you talking about your life coaching, when you have to people go to therapy, and my wife has always told me I should go to therapy, and I've done it. I don't find it to be particularly productive. And from what I've seen, like she's been going to this therapist as long as we've been together. It doesn't seem that they're fixing the problem. I'm joking there a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think the thing with therapy though is, I mean, if you're going to couples therapy, unless you're working on yourselves, like the therapy is never going to fucking work, right? Like if you can't, you're not going to fix a joint problem if you can't fix your own fucking problems. And I think I went to therapy for a bit, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I get really super passionate about this stuff because I think therapy is good to maybe identify the problem, right? And then it's like week after week, you're identifying your problem, usually the same fucking problem, but there's no solution to it, right? There's not they give you the awareness a lot of the times in therapy, but you don't get the action. And I think that's where the coaching comes in. It's where like you're going to be aware, but we're also going to make sure you find that action that's going to get you out of that fucking problem.
You, as you were saying before, though, and I think this is important. Like again, you're not going to seek therapy if you don't think something is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a chronic gambler and you're making a good living off it, you're not going to go get help for your gambling problem because it's not a problem. It's a solution.
Correct.
Right? Imagine if you're the guy, you go into a casino, you win like 10 grand. About every time you go in there, you're just walking out with cash. Like that's not a problem.
Nope.
You wouldn't be like, oh, I have a really bad gambling problem. No, the gambling
I'm a
problem,
good gambler.
Yeah, the gambling problem is only when you're bad at it. Like, so
correct.
You need to recognize in yourself, this is a flaw. I want to do something about the flaw. Again, generally, people who go to couples therapy, your spouse says, we should go get help. If you think that the relationship's in trouble, you're like, yeah, I'll go to that. If you don't, you'll say, I'm not going to that. We don't need that bullshit. You have to recognize the problem before you're willing to go and address it. And so, like you said, it does start with you because You're not going to seek therapy or coaching or anything if you think everything is aces. And so it does take some self-evaluation.
Yeah.
And
And that's
I,
that's a
it's
hard thing, Joe.
important.
Like
It
that's a
is. It's
hard
one of the most
that's a,
difficult
it's
things in the world.
1,000% to sit there and say, hey, like to own your shit is very difficult. But I think once you learn to do it, like your perspective changes. Like it's like and I could say this because I went through it, right? Like I had to go work on myself to make sure whatever I did in my first marriage, I'm not doing again. Right. Like, and it was nothing catastrophic, but I've been open. It was communication. Like that was my biggest thing. Maybe now I over communicate if you ask my wife. But it's being aware of it. But now I know, like, I'm so aware of like what I do. Right. Like, so I'm aware that I tend to compare myself to others. Right. I'm aware that I get ahead of myself. I'm aware of certain things that trigger me throughout the day, right? Like I think for me, like my biggest thing is reacting. Like I told you about, I got that email today, and like I tend to react very quickly to things. But because I'm aware of it now, like I'm able to say, "Oh, I'm doing it, and this is how I'm going to rein it in." Right? This is how I'm going to. This is my new coping skills. So, like for me, like when I'm about to react, I do this weird thing I saw in a movie where I'm touching my fingertips. I forgot what movie it was, but like some spy was doing it like while he was like being interrogated, right? And it sounds crazy, but it helped me like just say, hey, you know what, it takes my focus off it. But I wouldn't know or at least try to do something to change it unless I was aware of it. And then once you start aware of one thing, you're like, hey, what else do I do? Right? Because then it becomes fun, right? Because now you're not competing against anyone else but yourself. Because now I'm confident in any situation, any room, anything you put me in. Like I know I'm good. Like because I know what's gonna get me in trouble, and I know how to not do that, right? And then in turn, it allows me to focus on what other people are doing. And now that I can pay attention to what you're actually doing instead of the dumb shit I used to do, it's a problem for everybody. And it's a healthy thing to do. And it doesn't take a long time. You could listen to a 10-minute podcast or a chapter in a book, or it could be you could use TikTok in reels and just narrow down your searches and your filters on what you're doing to say, like, listen, I need this positivity or I need motivational stuff. And you could use all these sources that me and you complain about, like old men, but to your advantage and make it be okay. So, I get excited talking about it because it's pretty awesome. Because we didn't have those tools growing up, right? Like they're like, yo,
No.
I got to go look at Encyclopedia Britannica. Like, and by the time you got the fucking encyclopedia, the shit was 2 years old, anyways. Like, this shit was so fucking outdated. Um, so like, I get super excited about it because it's constant work. It's you never reach that point of I'm that peak person, right? Like I'm that fucking guy. I don't have to approve because it like everyone needs to improve in something. It doesn't make you a bad person. I think it's just the progress is what brings the happiness. Like if you're not progressing in life, like you're never going to be happy. And I'm not talking about like bigger house, cars, and money. It's just being someone who's a little bit better than you were a year before. And however you measure that, if you're better or not, that's up to each individual. Some people want to lose weight. Some people just want to be happy. Some people want to be a better husband or wife or a better father or a grandfather. And you could be 60 or you could be 30, right? Like it's that little progress that like I get so passionate about because people don't have these conversations, right? Like I'm not gonna admit like I do dumb shit or like I have these weird quirks but if you don't and you just ignore it, then you're always going to be the same person and then you're not progressing. And then you may be happy where you're at when you're 30, but when you're 40 and you're still where you're at when you were 30, I can promise you're not gonna be fucking happy, bro. Like
Yeah.
that stinks. Like, like and maybe if I was like 18 and I could just stay 18 for the rest of my life and not really have a lot of responsibility. But eventually you're going to be 44 and bald with a bum leg like me. It's going to
Yep.
happen. I mean, not you because you have a luscious head of hair, but like, it happens. So it's the progress. So I get so excited about it. I know I end up talking like a million miles an hour and I hog all the airtime on this podcast sometimes, but I'm like super passionate about it because I think even if it goes back to like we get away with shit we say and people don't get mad at us, but because we own our shit, right? Like we own who we are. Like we know like, hey, this is not the best part of my personality, but it is what it is.
You and I are self-aware enough that in certain company, if we were to say something and someone take it in an offensive manner, you and I are self-aware enough to recognize that and make amends, not attempt to do the double down.
Yeah, you don't go full Monty on something.
Don't
when you give them a peek
gotta
and they're
tell
like,
you,
fuck that, you're like, drop it.
there's nothing I have less sympathy for than the idiot who doubles down. It's like if somebody calls you out, be a grown up. Own up. Oh, I'm sorry. Listen. You're given that I'm sorry that you're offended apology. And it's not a great one, but the acknowledgement that you've offended someone, like, oh, I'm sorry, these are good friends of mine. I don't mean any offense. It's just me. And all your friends, oh, it's Vin, and then, oh yeah, no, I kind of knew you were joking. No, it's fine. Right. And by the end of the night, everyone's having a good time and joking. Because again, you're able to recognize I'll give you a great story. Okay. I was working at a radio station in Portland, Maine. And I was replacing a 2-man night show, which is funny because I'm replacing currently a 2-man afternoon show on 104. So I go in and I trained with these guys for like 3 nights. And the overnight guy came in and he was wearing a Chicago Bulls starter jacket.
Yeah.
Okay. The other guy was kind of a big, oafy, funny dude. And the other guy was like, metrosexual, but like you definitely seemed like he liked the girls. So mind you, this is 2000, the year 2000. A promo comes on of Carson Daly. And I said, look at that F. And immediately, I recognized, someone in this room is gay. Damn it. I knew immediately. The problem was, it's Maine.
Yeah.
They don't dress like they do in the city. So I'm looking around at these 3 guys, and I could tell from their faces, one of them, they all had that look for like they felt bad for the guy who I offended, and I couldn't recognize who it was. 2 nights later, right? They're done.
Yeah.
Nothing comes up or gets resolved. The overnight guy comes in, Chicago Bulls jacket. He says to me, I want to talk to you about something. And I looked at him then and I said, this is about what I said about Carson Daly the other night, isn't it? And he said, yes, as a matter of fact, it is. I said, listen, I've been using that word my whole life. I don't mean, and I know you're not even supposed to be using it at this point. And that's probably the last time I ever said the word. Okay. Yeah. We became very good friends, me and that dude. And again, I could have doubled down in that moment. But I owned it. And, I mean, again, it was like, as I was, what was I, 25, 26 years old when that happened. You know what I mean? And you grow as an adult and you learn and you have to be able to recognize everything that's happening around you and be cognizant of it and adjust on the fly.
It's the recognition. I will tell you that's one thing I worked on over the years is the not doubling down. Like I was a very much I didn't double down, bro. I'm triple, quadruple. I'm curb stomping this shit down. So back in my heyday, and this is like 5 years ago, this would be, I was notorious for, oh, you don't think I'm funny? Watch this shit. I will. I threw down all my cards all the time, and I used to walk around and be like, "Fuck it, if you don't like me, fuck it." Right? That's a you problem. It's not a me problem. I'm awesome. You're not. You suck. Right? And then you start like looking back, and you're like, you know what? I think for me when I when I started going through the therapy and the coaching and stuff, I'm like, yes, it's fine being me, but not at the cost of hurting somebody else, offending somebody else just because I can. And then I started thinking, all the opportunities I missed out on maybe meeting a good friend, right? Or having a meaningful conversation because I was embarrassed for the way I was acting. Like, right? It wasn't like that guy didn't say anything wrong because what I said it wasn't funny to him, right? It doesn't have to be funny to him. But like I was so embarrassed about like how dare you not like me, right? Like it was that 100% ego, no, you're not going to challenge me. Right? Like and like
Well,
how
that's the other
dare you?
thing. Being you and comfortable being you also means when you make an effort and someone doesn't reciprocate, you're comfortable enough to be like, well, fuck it, I tried.
Yeah,
Not everyone's gonna like me, and you know what? I can live with that. That's not a
that
reflection. It's not a reflection on me.
that's 100% like you. I couldn't have said it better. Like it's not a reflection of you at all, right? Like we've discussed this. We're not everyone's cup of tea, right? But that's okay because not everyone drinks tea, right? Like some, like it's just we're not everyone's flavor. But I used to I think it was just I wanted everyone to just be like, all right, Vince, cool. Like that was like I just wanted to be accepted by everybody instead of just saying, hey, it's okay if this person doesn't like me. Right, because then I'd go home and be like, "Well, I don't really like that guy," and it doesn't make that guy or girl a bad person. It's just not my cup of tea, right? Like, so, like, why was I getting so upset because this guy didn't like me? And I know I'm a handful. Like, I even when I tone it down, even when I'm reading a room, and then I am tempering myself. Like, I know that like sometimes I'm just not their flavor, which is fine. Doesn't make them bad people,
Right.
but it's also my job to be like, hey, you know what? I get it. I read it. I'm not putting myself in that situation again. I'm not going to keep going back to the same situations, the same scenarios, because then you're making everybody else uncomfortable. Like for what? Like I don't need to prove a point. Like I'm aware of who I am, and it makes my life a lot easier because now I could have a handful of friends and be fine instead of having 40 and having to people please everybody.
My last thought on this is don't expect anything from people.
Mm-hmm.
You open a door for somebody, hold a door for somebody. Usually when I hold a door for somebody, they start to do that run and I'll say, "Hey, I'm not in any rush. Take your time."
Correct.
You know, I hold doors for men, for women, for whoever's coming, black,
Yep.
white, whatever. Is I feel like letting a door shut in someone's face is really fucking rude.
It is.
But I will hold a door or open a door for somebody. If they thank me,
Cool.
great. If we have an exchange, hilarious.
Yeah.
If they don't say anything and they just walk in and then let the door shut in my face, my reaction is the same to all of those things. I just am me. I'll
Well,
play this any way you want to play it. You want to have
yeah,
a funny exchange back and forth. We can do that. You just want to, hey, thanks, appreciate it. It
but
could
it,
be
it
that. I don't have any expectation for
yeah,
what I think people are going to, how people are going to react to things. And I think that's the other thing. Again, it's about controlling yourself when you can't control the things around you, the way people react, the situations, the scenarios, whatever.
correct.
You
Yeah,
can only control yourself. It always does start with you. And if you're in a good place and you're comfortable and secure in what you're doing
yeah,
and what your goals are, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, you couldn't have ended this session on a better note. So I'm not going to, because that was spot on. That was a bullseye. Change of
I read
plans,
the notes.
CT.com. I
I,
love it. I love
I
it.
read the notes this week. I
I
stepped up
love
my
it.
game. I felt like that was important. So I read the notes
Dude,
and I
dude.
brought it home.
I like it. Check it out. Changeofplansct.com. It's at the bottom of the page. I got some new media up on the website, so check it out. If you guys have comments, questions, topics you want us to discuss, please hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, my website.
Yeah. If you don't follow us on Instagram, I think you're missing out because you've been posting great clips from this show in the show. Like, I love that stuff. I think it's super cool. So
Yeah, and plus, I mean, even check out our individual pages. You know, I'm at Jigga Daddy. You know, you can't forget that name. I got cool dogs. I got cool sneakers. But just to get to know us personally, because how we are in our personal lives is how we're trying to be on here. But you know, and just go out, live life, be your best self, stay in your lane, and you're gonna be okay.
I love it. For Vin
All right.
Provenzano, I'm Joe McGuire. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Change of Plans podcast.
See ya.